Stephen Valentino had not planned to stop at a bakery. He had a driver, a 12-item schedule, and 3 calls pending on his phone. He was Don Valentino, head of one of the most established organizations in the city, a man who managed contracts worth more than most people accumulated in 30 careful years of working. Bakeries were not on his schedule. Personal errands were something his assistants handled with the kind of quiet efficiency he paid them specifically to provide. But Claudia Marchetti had been specific. The wedding cake was to come from a shop on Mercer Street, recommended by someone in her family's network, and the Marchetti family, his consigliera Aldo had explained with the patience of someone who had explained it twice already, placed meaningful weight on a prospective husband showing personal involvement in the wedding details. It signaled respect. It signaled intention. These things mattered to the Marchettis. Stephen had been told this 3 times in total. He had put the card face down on his desk on Monday and returned to the contracts in front of him. He had put it in his jacket pocket on Tuesday and forgotten it was there. On Thursday morning, Aldo had knocked on the door of his office with the expression of a man who had made peace with having this conversation again. "The engagement dinner is next Thursday," Aldo said. "I know," Stephen said. "The cake order," Aldo said. Stephen had picked up the card. That was how Don Stephen Valentino, dressed in a deep maroon suit with a pocket square folded into a sharp point, came to step out of his car on Mercer Street at 2:15 on a Tuesday afternoon and stand in front of a small shop with a sky blue awning and a handwritten sign in the corner of the front window. "Today's special, lavender honey." The interior of Sweet Origins was warm and bright. Wide front windows let in a generous flood of afternoon light that fell across glass display cases running the full length of the counter. Inside the cases were tiered cakes in white and ivory and pale sage green, small pastries arranged in paper cups, a loaf of something golden crusted on a wooden shelf near the back. The ceiling had been painted the pale blue of a cloudless winter morning. Potted rosemary and thyme sat in a row near the register. The air smelled of vanilla and warm butter and something floral that Stephen could not immediately name. Soft instrumental music played somewhere at the back of the shop, something without words, slow and unhurried. He stood near the door and studied the menu board on the wall, already composing the interaction in his head. He would ask to see the wedding tier options. He would select one that matched Claudia's stated preference for clean, white design. He would be back in the car in 12 minutes, and the Marchetti family's feelings about personal involvement would be satisfied. The kitchen door opened. A woman came through carrying a small child on her hip. She wore a bright cobalt blue apron over a white linen shirt, and she moved with the easy efficiency of someone who had been doing this particular thing, carrying a child while navigating a working kitchen, long enough that the motion required no conscious thought. Her natural hair was coiled up and back under a blue and gold cloth wrap. Her brown skin was warm in the afternoon light, and she was speaking to the little girl in a low, patient voice, explaining something about the tray balanced in her free hand, her attention fully on the child and the tray and the path from the kitchen to the counter. She had not looked toward the front of the shop yet. Stephen did not move. He knew that walk. He knew the line of those shoulders and the particular tilt of her head when she was explaining something patiently to someone who needed it said twice. He knew the way she carried herself, straight and unhurried, with the quiet composure of a person who had decided at some point that the world would need to wait for her, and not the other way around. He had not seen Diane in 5 years. The last time had been in the hallway of the house they had shared for 4 years. She had been holding one bag. She had told him in a calm, clear voice that she could not stay inside his world any longer. She had asked him not to follow her. His lawyers had handled the rest within 2 weeks, and it had been quiet and civil, and he had told himself, enough times that it came close to belief, that the end of their marriage had been mutual. That she had wanted a quiet life and he had not been able to give her that. That they had simply chosen different directions, and that this was ordinary and that he had been fine. He had not considered, not once in 5 years, that she might have been carrying something else when she left. The woman reached the counter and set the tray down. She shifted the little girl higher on her hip without interrupting the motion, a practiced adjustment, the adjustment of someone who had been making it every day for years. Then she looked up. Her eyes found him across the warm, bright shop. The moment lasted no more than 2 seconds. But he saw everything in it, the recognition moving through her like a current, the way her expression went to a place of absolute stillness so quickly that only someone who knew her face very well would have caught the instant before she brought the calm over it. She had thought about this moment. She had prepared for it. She had been carrying the possibility of it around with her long enough that she had made a plan. Then the little girl turned her head to look at whatever her mother was looking at. She had her mother's round, soft face. She had her mother's warm brown skin. She had her mother's tight coils shot through with threads of copper. But the eyes were green. Not hazel, not a middle shade that carried the trace of it. They were the exact, specific green that Stephen saw every morning in the mirror, the color his own mother had called pine and glass, the color that had only ever been his. His heart did something he had not felt in years. Not the cold alertness of a dangerous negotiation. Not the controlled steadiness of a difficult meeting. Something older than either of those. Something that had no name in the vocabulary of his professional world. The little girl looked at him with calm, direct curiosity. No shyness. No alarm. Simply the clear, unfiltered gaze of a child who has not yet learned to look away from things that interest her. "Rosa," Diane said. Her voice was perfectly level. A young woman Stephen had not noticed appeared from somewhere near the left side of the shop and held out her hands for the child. Lena went without protest. She looked at Stephen over Rosa's shoulder all the way to the kitchen doorway, green eyes steady and unblinking, as though she were categorizing him and had not yet decided which category he belonged to. Diane walked to the far end of the counter, near the window, and waited. Stephen crossed the shop. She stood with her hands clasped in front of her. She wore a thin bracelet of small gold beads on her right wrist. The sunlight from the wide window caught it and also caught the side of her face and the gold threads in her cloth wrap. Her back was perfectly straight and her expression was the specific kind of calm that exists on the far side of a long and difficult rehearsal. "Her name is Lena," Diane said before he could speak. "She turned 4 in March. She is healthy and happy and she has everything she needs." Stephen heard all of it. The pride in every word. The protection beneath it. "She has my eyes," he said. "Yes," she said. "How long?" he asked. "I found out 6 weeks after I left," she said. "She is 4 years and 2 months old." He looked at her. "You didn't tell me," he said. "No," she said. "I did not." Outside the window, Mercer Street continued with its ordinary afternoon. A man walked past with a dog. 2 women stopped to look at the flower vendor's display across the way. The world moved through its Tuesday with no awareness at all that something enormous had just rearranged itself inside a small vanilla-scented bakery on an unremarkable block. "I'm not leaving," he said. His voice was quiet. It was always quiet, the voice of a man who had never needed volume. Diane looked at him for a long moment. She did not look surprised. "I know," she said. "But there are things you need to understand before you decide what not leaving means. And I will need more than this conversation to decide how much I trust you with any of them." From the back of the shop, Lena laughed. It was a clean, bright sound, surprised out of her by something Rosa had done, sudden and genuine and gone in a moment. But it filled the entire shop, moved through the warm vanilla-scented air, and settled in the center of Stephen Valentino's chest like something that had been missing for a very long time and had just, without warning, come home. He stood very still and listened to his daughter laugh for the first time. He did not order a cake. What would you do if the most ordinary afternoon of your life became the moment that rewrote everything you thought you knew? Drop your answer below and follow for every chapter of this story. He waited. Rosa reappeared from the kitchen and took a position behind the register with the practiced invisibility of someone who had worked in service long enough to understand when a room required that particular kind of professional absence. 2 customers came and went. She helped them, wrapped their purchases, and saw them out without once looking at the 2 people standing at the far end of the counter. When the shop was empty, Diane spoke. "There's a table near the window," she said. "If you want to sit." It was not quite an invitation. It was the management of a situation that was going to unfold regardless of whether she controlled the shape of it. He recognized the move. He used it himself. He sat at the table. She came and sat across from him without the counter between them, which he took as a small and deliberate offering. She had brought nothing with her. No coffee, no water, no gesture toward comfort. Her hands were on the table and her back was straight and she looked at him the way she had always looked at him when something mattered, directly, without the usual social softening. "Ask what you need to ask," she said. "Did you know when you left?" he asked. "No," she said. "I left in October. I found out in December. I was already living in my cousin Adi's apartment by then. 2 months gone." "When you found out," he said. "What did you think?" She was quiet for a moment in the way she was always quiet when she was deciding between the managed answer and the honest one. He waited. He knew the rhythm of this. He had spent 4 years learning it. "I thought about calling you for 3 days," she said. "I held my phone and thought about it, and then I thought about what calling you would actually mean. Not for me. For the child I was carrying." She paused. "And I decided I could not do it." "Because of my father?" he said. Because of everything, she said. Your father had called me 3 weeks before I left. He was very polite. He used the particular kind of politeness that is precise and total and leaves no room for misunderstanding. He told me the organization needed stability. That a family of the right kind was part of what created stability. That he hoped I would understand the position he was in. She turned her hands over on the table, a small gesture. He was not making a threat. He was explaining how things stood. And I understood very clearly exactly how things stood. Stephen was quiet. He thought about the dinner, months before Diane left, when a visiting associate had made a comment about the marriage that everyone at the table had pretended not to hear. He thought about the way he had turned the conversation smoothly and quickly, the way he had told himself it was managed. He thought about all the moments he had been smooth and quick and had confused that with protection. Your father called me again, she said. About 8 months after I opened this shop. He had learned about Lena. Stephen went still. He was still polite, she said. He told me the family was prepared to offer a generous arrangement, in exchange for handling things quietly. He used the word quietly several times. She looked at her hands. I told him the only thing he could do with the arrangement was take it back. He didn't tell me, Stephen said. No, she said. I assumed he wouldn't. He sat with that. His father, who had called the woman carrying his grandchild. Who had offered her money to remain invisible. Who had made that calculation in Stephen's name without his knowledge, and then gone to another dinner and talked about the family's honor as though both things could be true at the same time. He thought about how many other things had been managed in his name. What did you tell Lena? He asked. About her father. A small shift in her expression. That you existed, she said. That we had been people who mattered to each other, and that life sometimes takes people in different directions. I told her that the beginning of her story was simply the beginning, and that the rest of it was entirely her own to write. She paused. I did not want her filling the missing pieces in with something worse than the truth. He looked at her. That was kind, he said. To her. And to me. More than I deserved. I wasn't thinking about you, she said simply. I was thinking about her. He nodded. The bakery, he said. How long has it been open? 2.5 years, she said. He looked around the shop. The painted ceiling. The herbs. The glass cases built with obvious care and filled with the results of someone's very serious attention to their work. You built all of this, he said. With a loan and a mixer that kept breaking, she said. And a great deal of patience from Adiz, who watched Lena in those early years. And 4 years of recipe testing before any of it existed. She glanced at the display case. And one food blogger who happened to like honey almond cake. Lena grew up here, he said. From the beginning, she said. She slept behind the counter in a basket when she was very small. She knows where everything goes and how to fold a pastry bag. She has opinions about which flavors are worth the effort. Something moved in her voice, something warm and proud. She is usually right. I need to see her, he said. Properly. On your terms. I'm not here to disrupt what you've built. Diane considered this for a long time. You have a wedding to plan, she said. That is a separate matter, he said. Is it? She said. He did not answer immediately because the honest answer was not yet clear to him. I don't know yet, he said, which was the most truthful thing he had said in years. She looked at him the way she always had when she was weighing something, with care and without illusion. Come back Thursday, she said. Before I open. 6 o'clock. We'll talk without the rest of this in the room. She stood. Come alone. Not your driver waiting around the corner. Just you. She went back to the counter. He sat for another minute in the warm, bright shop. Then he stood, straightened his jacket and walked to the door. He paused and looked at the menu board. Lavender honey. Almond cream. Rose and cardamom. He walked out into the afternoon. He had a daughter. He had a daughter named Lena who slept behind a counter in a basket when she was small and who had opinions about flavors and had been building a life in a warm, vanilla-scented bakery for 4 years while he had been planning a strategic marriage that he had never once questioned. He thought about Thursday. He got in the car. He was there at 5:50. He had not been able to sleep past 4, which almost never happened. He was a man who slept efficiently. But Thursday had been a weight in his mind since Tuesday, and by 5 o'clock he had showered and dressed in a deep emerald green blazer and dark trousers and left his building on foot. He had left his driver home as promised. Mercer Street at that hour was a different city. The flower vendor's shop was dark. The tailor's window was unlit. The sky above the buildings was the particular shade of pale gray that exists between night and full morning, and the street had the quality of silence that cities only offer for very small windows of time, before the engines start and the voices start and the ordinary noise of things reasserts itself. Sweet Origins had a warm light on inside. He could see it through the window even with the awning still up. She was already there. He knocked. She came to the door in a bright red apron over a pale yellow shirt, her hair wrapped today in a yellow and white cloth. She had flour on her forearm. She looked like someone who had been working for some time and was entirely at peace with this fact. She opened the door and held it. He stepped in. The kitchen behind her was warm, and the whole shop smelled of something bread-like and something sweet at the same time. She had set up the front table with 2 cups of coffee and a plate of small pastries. She had not arranged it neatly. It was a working arrangement, the coffee there because it was practical, a pen on the table she had not moved. He sat. She sat across from him. She pulled her cup toward her. "Lena won't be up for another hour," she said. "She sleeps until 7:30 unless something wakes her." "I'm not here only for Lena this morning," he said. "I know," she said. "You want the rest of the story." "Yes," he said. Diane looked at her coffee cup. Then she told him. She told him about leaving in October with 1 bag, because she had not wanted to look as though she needed anything from him. She told him about arriving at Adie's apartment in a neighborhood she did not know and spending the first 2 nights lying awake listening to unfamiliar sounds from an unfamiliar street, which was the loneliest she had ever been. She told him about December, the clinic, the particular way time seemed to shift when a result confirmed itself and a life recalculated around a single new fact. She told him about the 3 days with her phone. The calculations she had run and rerun. What telling him would mean in practice. Not in theory, not in some version of events where his family operated differently than it did, but in the actual world that she had watched for 4 years from the inside, the world with its systems and its pressures and its particular way of treating things that did not fit the plan as problems to be resolved. She had run the calculation and she had made her decision. "Your father called again," she said. 8 months after I opened. He had found out. Stephen set his cup down. "He was still polite," she said. "He told me there was a figure the family was prepared to offer. In exchange for my handling this quietly." She turned her bracelet on her wrist, a small unconscious motion. "I told him what he could do with the offer." "He didn't tell me," Stephen said. "I assumed he wouldn't," she said. And then quietly, "You were already preparing for another arrangement by then." He was quiet with that. "Tell me about building this place," he said. She looked at him to confirm this was a genuine request, and then she told him. She told him about the loan and the broken mixer and the pastry courses she completed on a laptop during Lena's afternoon sleep, 1 module at a time, her mother's bread recipes from Lagos written on index cards in the drawer beside the counter. She told him about the first 3 months when she opened to almost no one, and how she had baked anyway because stopping was not an option she had given herself. She told him about the food blogger and the morning the order system filled up for the first time, and how she had sat down on the kitchen floor for 2 minutes before she could stand back up. She told him about the day Lena took her first steps between 2 flour bags. How Rosa had appeared in the doorway holding her phone and crying, which was the moment Diane understood that what she had built was not only a business but a community, a small one held together by care. He listened to all of it. He did not offer commentary. He did not suggest what might have been easier with different resources. He simply listened, fully, with the undivided attention that had always been one of the things she had found hardest to replace. She had forgotten that about him. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "I failed to protect you," he said, "before you left. The dinners, the comets, my father's calls. I smoothed things and told myself it was handling them. It wasn't. I was choosing the path of least conflict instead of standing next to you." Diane looked at him. "That is the most direct thing you have ever said to me," she said. "I've had 5 years," he said. "So have I," she said. And then, more slowly, "You are not quite the same person you were." "I don't know that," he said honestly. "Neither do I," she said. "But I am willing to see." She stood and moved toward the kitchen, then paused in the doorway. "There is a park 3 blocks east of here," she said in the careful, measured tone of someone making a simple geographical observation. "Lena likes it on Saturday mornings. Around 10 before it gets crowded." She went back to the kitchen. Stephen sat in the warm, bright shop with a coffee that had gone slightly cool and the smell of bread in the air and the knowledge that something was being offered to him that he had not earned but was being given anyway, carefully, with full awareness of the risk. He thought about Saturday. He thought about what it meant to be given a chance you had not earned. He was still thinking about it when the kitchen sounds began in earnest, and the morning light began to change, and somewhere in the back of the shop a small girl with green eyes woke up and called for her mother. The Marchetti estate sat behind a long private drive lined with olive trees that had been chosen for the statement they made rather than any practical purpose. Stephen had noted this the first time he visited. He noted it again as his car moved slowly up the drive on Thursday evening. His driver let him out at the entrance at 7:50. He was 10 minutes early, which he had calculated as appropriate. Not eager. Not late. Precisely where he intended to be. Claudia met him in the entrance hall. She was wearing a floor-length gown in deep burgundy red, her dark hair swept back. She was tall and polished and the kind of organized beautiful that comes from long practice and very good taste, and she held out her hand and he shook it, because at 2 previous meetings they had established that handshakes were the correct greeting for 2 people operating in a professional partnership, which was what this arrangement was, regardless of what the family called it. Her father, Marco Marchetti, appeared from a side room with the energy of a man who had arranged something he was pleased with. He was heavy-set with silver at his temples and a grip designed to communicate authority. Stephen received it without expression, which was usually how he received such things. Dinner was held in a room with high ceilings and long windows facing the city lights, 7 courses, excellent wine, and the kind of conversation that is careful and pleasant and contains a great deal of information while communicating almost nothing about how anyone actually feels. Marco talked about the arrangement, the territories it secured, the business partnerships it formalized, the public face it would present to a world that paid attention to these things. He talked about port agreements and Naples properties and the way the 2 families' interests aligned across 3 separate areas of operation. He had clearly enjoyed preparing this presentation. He was thorough and convincing. Stephen listened, made appropriate observations and ate the food, which was genuinely very good. Beside him, Claudia ate her dinner with the quiet, contained patience of someone who has been asked to be present at a long meeting that concerns her without really involving her. She moved through the courses correctly, said the right things at the right moments, and had the same exact practiced smile she had at every point he had observed her. Between the 4th and 5th course, Marco was drawn into a conversation with the man on his left, something about a shipping timeline. Claudia leaned slightly toward Stephen. "You don't want this either," she said. Quietly. "Precisely." He looked at her. She was looking forward. Her profile was perfect. She could have been commenting on the centerpiece. "I want what's good for both families," he said, equally quiet. "That's a very diplomatic answer," she said. "I'm a diplomatic person," he said. "Yes," she said. "I've read that about you." She moved her water glass slightly. "My cousin Elena married into an arrangement 6 years ago. Her husband is a reasonable man. They have built a reasonable life." She looked at the centerpiece. "She told me last Christmas that she sometimes forgets what it felt like to want something." Stephen looked at her. "What do you want?" he asked. She was quiet for a moment. "I want to run the European holdings on my own authority," she said. "Without a marriage as the qualifying credential. Without my father deciding what I need in order to be taken seriously." She took a small sip of wine. "I am very good at what I do. I have been proving it for 6 years. And the primary reason I am relevant in this room is because of who my father is and what my marriage to you would secure." She set the glass down. "I don't find that a reasonable position to be in." Stephen looked at her with something close to genuine respect. "We should talk," he said. "Privately. Not here." "Yes," she said. And the relief in her voice was small and very well managed, but it was there. "I think that would be considerably more useful than the next 3 courses." Marco turned back toward them and the dinner continued. On the way home, Stephen sat in the back of the car and watched the city past the window, all lit apartments and late streetcars and the ordinary business of people living their own lives by their own decisions. He thought about Claudia's voice saying she forgets what it feels like to want something. He thought about Diane's voice at 6 in the morning saying there is a park 3 blocks east. He thought about green eyes looking at him across a shop full of vanilla-scented air. He had been moving through his life for some time now with the assumption that the choices already made were fixed. That the path ahead was simply the continuation of what he had built. He had not, in a very long time, asked himself whether any of it was what he actually wanted. He thought about that for the rest of the drive and into the lobby of his building and up the elevator and into the quiet of his apartment, where he stood at the window for a while and looked at the city and asked himself the question as plainly as he could manage. "What do you want?" He did not have the answer yet. But he thought he knew where to look for it. He was there at 9:50. He had not been certain what to wear, which was unusual. He was a man who made decisions quickly and with confidence, and his wardrobe had never required deliberation before. But a jacket felt wrong. A jacket was for meetings. He was not going to a meeting. He was going to a park on a Saturday morning to be present, which was something he had almost no framework for. He chose dark trousers and a bright navy shirt, sleeves rolled to the forearm, and left the jacket on the bed. The park was a modest square of green 3 blocks from Sweet Origins, with benches along the perimeter and a play structure in the center and 2 old men who appeared to have an ongoing chess arrangement at a table near the far gate. It was pleasant in the autumn morning light, open and unhurried. He found a bench with a clear view of the sandbox and sat. At 10:04, Diane came through the gate with Lena walking beside her. Lena was wearing a bright yellow dress with white trim and small red shoes, and she was carrying a paper bag in both hands with the focused, solemn care of a small person transporting something important. Diane wore a cornflower blue coat over a white shirt, her hair free today, coiled and full, moving slightly in the morning breeze. Lena saw the sandbox immediately and increased her pace. Diane saw Stephen. She gave him a small nod. Not warm, not cold. The nod of someone who had made a choice and was standing in it without flinching. She guided Lena to the sandbox, which sat near his bench, and settled her at the edge of it with the contents of the bag, 3 small molds and a blue plastic shovel. Then she sat on the bench beside him. 2 feet of careful space between them. Lena examined the available sand with the focused expression of someone assessing the quality of the materials before beginning a specific project. She had not looked at Stephen yet. He did not hurry her. He watched the park instead. A woman walked a slow dog along the path. A child on a bicycle made careful, wobbling circles in the open section of grass. The 2 old men were already deep in their game. The autumn morning was mild and clear. Several minutes passed. Lena completed a sand shape, examined it critically, turned it out of the mold, found it acceptable. She started a second one. Then she looked up at him. "You were at the bakery," she said. "Yes," he said. "Mama makes the lavender cake there," she said. "It's purple." She delivered this with the authority of someone confirming a fact that the other person may not have access to. "I saw it in the case," he said. She evaluated him for a moment. "Do you like purple things?" she asked. "I think I could learn to," he said. She appeared to find this a reasonable position. She returned to the sandbox. He glanced at Diane. She was watching the chess players, though he was fairly certain she was aware of every word of this conversation. "What's your name?" Lena asked. "Stephen," he said. She tried it. "Stefan," she said. "Close," he said. "Estefan." "Stefan," she said again with complete confidence. The matter appeared to be settled. He let it go. "What are you building?" he asked. She looked at her work with the evaluative expression of an artist assessing progress. "A town," she said. "This is the bakery." She pointed with the shovel. "This is the park." Another point. "I haven't decided about that part yet. Maybe the house." "A big house?" he asked. She looked at him with the patient expression of someone answering a question that has an obvious answer. "Medium," she said. "Houses don't have to be big. You just have to like the people in them." Stephen was quiet for a moment. He could see Diane in the corner of his vision, become very still on the bench beside him. "That is a very wise thing to say," he said. Lena shrugged in the way children do when an adult confirms something they already knew. The morning moved. Lena progressed from the sandbox to the play structure and back. She explained the rules of the town she was building, which centered on being respectful to neighbors and always asking before building near the bakery. She informed him that her favorite color was currently orange but might change to red by the end of the week. She asked him what work he did. He said he managed businesses. She said like Mama, and he said yes, something like that, which she accepted and moved on from. She explained why the 2 old men's chess game was interesting, which was because you could tell, she said, that they had been playing each other for a long time because of how they waited, and that waiting was different when you knew someone. Stephen agreed that she was probably right about that. At some point she came and stood directly beside the bench. She held out one small hand, slightly sandy. "Help me up," she said. He took her hand and helped her climb up beside him. She sat for about 4 minutes, feet not reaching the ground, swinging them slightly, surveying the park with the proprietary air of someone who has established this territory by regular use and knows it well. Then she climbed down and went back to the sandbox. Diane was quiet beside him. Then, in a voice carefully arranged to be casual, "She likes you." "I don't know that I've earned it," he said. "She doesn't deal in earning," Diane said. "She deals in what she observes." She observed that you listened when she spoke and that you weren't trying to be anything. She paused. "That matters more than most adults realize." He looked at his daughter, who was pressing sand into a mold with the blue shovel and explaining something to no visible listener, a habit she apparently had. "She's extraordinary," he said. It was the only word that covered it. "She really is," Diane said. And in her voice, directed not at him but at the little girl in the yellow dress with the red shoes and the impossible eyes, he heard something that had not been in her voice before. Warmth. Unhesitating and full. He sat in the autumn sunshine and felt something settle in him that had been unsettled for 5 years. He did not want to move quickly. He did not want to go anywhere. He simply sat and watched and let the morning be exactly what it was. Rosa Esposito had been working at Sweet Origins for 2 years, and in that time she had become, by her own estimation, a reasonably accurate reader of the energies of the shop. She knew when a delivery was going to be short before the truck arrived. She knew when a customer was about to ask for a special order they had not called ahead about. She knew when Lena was coming in from the back apartment with a specific project in mind rather than simply moving through the space, because Lena's footsteps had a different quality depending on which of those two things was happening. And she had known, since the Tuesday of the man in the maroon suit, that something had changed. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a way that announced itself or demanded acknowledgement. But in the small, accumulating way that things actually change when they are real and not performed. Diane's better apron was on the front hook instead of the back one. The front display case had been reorganized on Wednesday evening, after closing, which had never happened before. The lavender honey cakes were being refilled an extra time a week. And Diane was humming. Diane did not hum. Rosa noted all of this carefully and said nothing, because she had 3 older sisters and had grown up understanding that certain things, if commented on directly, stop happening. She simply watched and continued doing her job and waited to see what shape the thing was going to take. On Wednesday afternoon, Stephen came in. He wore a deep green jacket and dark trousers, no tie. He came through the door the way people come through a door when the place on the other side is somewhere they want to be rather than somewhere they are going on an errand. He nodded to Rosa with the kind of acknowledgement that was genuine rather than performed, the nod of someone who sees you rather than someone who is managing your impression of them. He sat at the front table. Rosa brought him a coffee without being asked because she had been bringing him a coffee without being asked for 3 visits now, and she had a natural gift for recognizing patterns. He said thank you in the quiet way he said most things and she went back behind the counter. Lena appeared from the back 12 minutes later. She was carrying an extremely large piece of paper covered in drawings rendered in pink, orange and green crayon, and she wore the expression she always wore when she had just completed something. A combination of deep satisfaction and an urgent need to share the satisfaction with whoever was available. She spotted Stephen and changed direction immediately. "Stefan," she said, climbing into the chair beside him without waiting for an invitation. "Look at this." She spread the paper on the table. Rosa could see it clearly from behind the counter. It was the town, the one Lena had been describing to anyone who would listen all week, the one she had built first in sand and was now rendering in a more permanent medium. There was the bakery, identifiable by size and by the row of small squares Lena had drawn to represent the display cases. There was the park, with 2 figures at a table that Rosa understood to be the chess players. There was the medium house. And there were figures. One with a crown of tight circular lines for hair, clearly Diane. One small, round, yellow, clearly Lena herself. One tall, with no visible hair at all. "That's the whole town," Lena said. "I finished it." "Tell me everything about it," Stephen said. And she did. She told him about the bakery and its importance because food was important and the bakery was where the food came from. She told him about the park rules. She told him about the chess players and how she had figured out they were old friends. She pointed at the tall figure. "That's you," she said. "Stefan. I couldn't do the hair." Stephen looked at the figure for a moment. "You put me in the town," he said. "You're here a lot now," she said, with the complete matter-of-factness of someone stating an observed truth. "So you go in the town." Rosa, behind the counter, arranged some cups with careful attention. She looked toward the kitchen doorway. Diane was standing in it, flour on one forearm, cloth in her other hand, absolutely still. She was watching Lena lean over the drawing and explain the addition she was going to make next, a tree near the park because trees were for birds and birds were good. She was watching Stephen lean forward with his elbows on the table and ask exactly the right question, the question that led to the next part of the explanation, the question of a person who was genuinely interested and not managing a small person's time. Diane's expression was not readable in the way her expressions never quite were. But Rosa had 2 years of data on Diane. She could see the thing that Diane was not yet letting herself see. The way she watched them together had a quality to it that Rosa recognized, the quality of a person watching something that matters while trying to maintain the position that it does not matter yet. Rosa went to the far end of the counter and pretended to reorganize the cups. He has a particular quality, Rosa said quietly when Diane came to collect supplies from the shelf. Rosa, Diane said. I'm making a professional observation about the customer experience, Rosa said. Diane said. He knows how to be still, Rosa said. Near children. Not everybody can do that. Some adults make children feel managed. He just sits there like being with her is the point. She arranged a cup. That's rarer than it should be. Diane picked up her supplies. I heard you, she said and went back to the kitchen. But Rosa had seen it. The moment before Diane said it, the way her shoulders dropped, just slightly, the particular tension she carried in her upper back releasing in a single small movement, the way a door releases when the person on the other side stops pressing against it. Rosa went back to the register. At the front table, Lena was drawing an addition to the town on a fresh napkin, and Stephen was watching with his full attention, his coffee going cool beside him, and he was asking another good question. And in the kitchen something was opening. Rosa was confident in her reading. She started setting out the good pastries for the Saturday display on Friday afternoon, just in case anyone came by to share them. If this story is pulling at something in you, share it with someone who believes in second chances. And tell us in the comments, what would you give up to build a life that was really yours? Diane knew Giorgio Valentino before she saw him. She had spent 4 years inside the world he ran, learning to read the particular quality of attention that changed in a room when a certain kind of person entered it. She was behind the counter on a Thursday morning when she heard the door open and the air in the shop shifted slightly, the way it shifts when a person with a specific kind of authority comes through a door. She looked up. He was 65, silver-haired, wearing a dark charcoal overcoat and a suit beneath it. He was not tall, but he carried himself in a way that borrowed height from authority, from decades of being deferred to, from a lifetime of entering rooms and having them adjust to his presence rather than the other way around. He was alone. She set down the order sheet she had been reviewing and came to the counter. Mr. Valentino, she said. Her voice was level. He looked around the shop. His gaze moved across the display cases and the painted ceiling and the herbs on the shelf with the expression of a man cataloging things he has not yet decided what to do with. It's a nice place, he said. Smaller than I expected. It's the right size, she said. He came to the counter and looked at the cakes in the case without looking at them. I heard about the child, he said. I expected you would eventually, she said. Stephen should have been told, he said. Stephen, she said, was not told 5 years ago because the circumstances at the time made telling him inadvisable. You helped create those circumstances. He looked at her. She looked back. She had not looked away from this man in 4 years of dinners and meetings, and she did not intend to start now. We could have handled this differently, he said. There are arrangements that work for everyone. I'm not a situation that needs arranging, she said. I'm not suggesting you are, he said, with that specific measured patience that was his version of good manners. I'm suggesting there are resources the family can offer. For you. For the child. Education. Stability. The kind of real advantages that would make her future considerably more secure. He left the offer sitting there between them, wrapped in the language of generosity, with the actual conditions implied underneath. And in exchange, Diane said, I would handle this quietly. He did not confirm or deny. He simply looked at her with the expression of a man who assumed this was already understood. Stephen has obligations, he said. To the family. To the arrangement with the Marchetti family. A disruption at this stage would be difficult for a great many people. For you, she said. It would be difficult for you. Giorgio's expression shifted. Not anger. Something more controlled than anger. The particular composure of a man who has not been spoken to this directly in some time. I understand, he said, that you feel the family owes you something. You may be right. But Stephen has responsibilities that extend beyond personal matters. He needs to operate from a position of stability. Then let him decide what stability means, she said. He is a grown man. Stephen, Giorgio said carefully, does not always see the complete picture. Then perhaps, she said equally carefully, someone should stop controlling which pieces of the picture he gets to see. The door opened. Stephen came in. He was wearing a navy blazer and he was already looking toward the counter before he was fully through the door, the way a person looks when they have been thinking about a place on the walk over. He saw his father. He stopped. He looked at Diane. He read the room. She watched him do it, quickly, completely, the way he had always processed a situation when it mattered. She watched him understand what the room contained and what had been happening in it. She watched something cross his face that she had not seen there before. Or perhaps had not been given the chance to see. He walked to the counter. He positioned himself beside Diane, so that he and his father were on opposite sides of it. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Having a conversation," Giorgio said. "This is Diane's shop," Stephen said. "She didn't invite you." "She's raising your child," Giorgio said. "That makes her situation relevant to the family." "No," Stephen said. Quietly. Without volume. In the particular tone that was not a negotiating position but a statement of what was true. "You're not thinking clearly," Giorgio said. "I'm thinking very clearly," Stephen said. "You came here and offered Diane money to stay out of my life. Without telling me. The same way you called her 5 years ago without telling me. The same way you have made decisions in my name that I would not have made and then managed the information so carefully that I never had to know about them." He paused. "I am not going to stand here and let that continue." The shop was very quiet. Rosa had appeared in the kitchen doorway and had the stillness of someone who understands they are witnessing something significant and has decided that the correct response is not to move. Giorgio looked at his son for a long moment. "You're making a decision based on emotion," he said. "I'm making a decision based on what's right," Stephen said. "Which is something you told me was the same as what was good for the family. Maybe it's time to find out if that was true." Giorgio straightened his coat. He looked at Diane. Whatever was in the look, it contained more than she had expected. There were several things moving through it, most of which she could not fully read. But somewhere in the middle of all of them, briefly, was something that might have been acknowledgement. "Think carefully," he said to Stephen. "I have been," Stephen said. Giorgio turned and walked toward the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. "The child," he said without turning around, "has your mother's jawline. I saw her at the window when I came in." He walked out. The door closed. Rosa disappeared back into the kitchen. Diane stood behind the counter for a moment without speaking. She was looking at the door but she was not seeing it. "Are you all right?" Stephen asked. She looked at him. "Yes," she said. "He is not the most difficult person I have ever stood across from." Stephen nodded. Then quietly, "I'm sorry he came here." "You didn't send him," she said. "No," he said. "But I created the conditions that made him think he could." He looked at the door. "That changes now." She held his gaze. "Thank you," she said, "for standing there." He nodded. Neither of them said anything more for a moment. But something between them had shifted. Something that had been carefully kept in place was no longer held quite so tightly. From the kitchen, they heard Lena call Rosa's name and ask where the orange crayon had gone, which was exactly the kind of question that returned the world to its ordinary business. He called Claudia's private number on Friday morning. Not the number that went through the Marchetti family office. The one from the business card she had pressed into his hand at the engagement dinner with the quiet comment that it might be useful to have a direct line. She answered on the second ring. "I was wondering when you'd call," she said. "We need to meet," he said. "I know," she said. "I'll choose the place." She chose a restaurant in the newer part of the city, open and well lit, with large windows and tables spaced far enough apart that conversations stayed private. It was exactly the kind of place two people choose when they are not hiding a meeting but are also not performing one. She was already there when he arrived, seated at a corner table near the window, dressed in a deep emerald green blouse. She looked, he thought, more herself than she had in any of their previous meetings. She looked like someone who had stopped performing and was simply present. She ordered sparkling water and looked at him. "End it?" she said. "Yes," he said. They looked at each other for a moment, two people who had never been in love acknowledging that they had both always known it. "My father will be difficult," she said. "Mine will be worse," he said. She almost smiled. "We should form a group." "How do you want to handle it?" he asked. She thought. "I want to handle my father myself. He respects directness, even when the direct thing is not what he wants to hear. If I tell him plainly, he will be upset, but he will process it. If he hears it as a negotiation between us, he'll treat it as one and the negotiation will run forever." She turned her water glass. "The harder piece is the actual business side of what we were supposed to formalize. That is real and it still needs addressing." "I've been thinking about that," Stephen said. "So have I," she said. "What I actually want, as I mentioned at dinner, is to run the European holdings on my own authority. Not attached to a marriage. As a director." She looked at him. "But I also think there is a genuine business case for a partnership between our families that isn't a marriage. A legitimate one. Clean books. Something that can be shown to anyone. He looked at her steadily. What kind of partnership? He asked. I've been reviewing the Valentino Hospitality Holdings, she said. The properties in this city. You have been running them through channels that are, to put it politely, imprecise. I think there is a substantial case for formalizing those assets into a company that operates on clear terms, in which both families have a stake, in which my family's European network provides connections, and your properties provide the infrastructure. She paused. I am very good at building structures, Stephen. I have been managing assets that other people underestimate me on for 6 years. Let me build this one correctly. He was quiet for a moment. He thought about the folder that had been growing on his desk. The outline of an exit that was organized and dignified rather than simply sudden. The plans that had been forming since he had stood in a bakery and heard a little girl laugh for the first time. I'm in the process of stepping back, he said, from the other parts. The parts that require imprecision. I know, she said. I wouldn't be at this table if I thought you were asking me to do anything else. We'll need lawyers, he said. I have 3, she said. Good ones. Clean ones. There will be pressure from both families, he said. Yes, she said. I'm planning to have my father's agreement before the pressure arrives. You should consider doing the same. He thought about his father's expression in the bakery doorway. My situation is different, he said. I know, she said. And she asked nothing more about it, which he appreciated. They ordered lunch and spent 2 hours building the outline of a partnership agreement. She had a notebook. Her handwriting was small and precise, and she had clearly already done a significant amount of thinking before this meeting. They went through the assets one by one, the conversion timelines, the governance structure, the terms that would satisfy both families while leaving the marriage requirement behind entirely. When they were done, he paid and they shook hands at the door. A genuine handshake, the kind between 2 people who have chosen to be on the same side of something. I think, Claudia said, that we will be considerably more useful to each other as business partners than we would ever have been as spouses. I think you're right, he said. Good, she said. I'll send you my lawyer's contact on Monday. Tell yours to be ready. She walked to her car. He stood outside the restaurant for a moment. The afternoon was cool and the street was busy with its ordinary Saturday life. People moving past him with bags and dogs and children and the comfortable unhurriedness of a free afternoon. He took his phone out of his pocket. Then he put it back. He had a bakery to visit. The process of leaving was not dramatic. He had expected it to feel larger. A rupture, perhaps, or a moment of significant resolution, the kind of moment that his world usually produced when something important changed. He had spent 20 years inside a structure with certain rituals of power and consequence, and he had assumed that departing that structure would carry the weight of all of it. Instead, it happened in meetings. 12 of them, across 3 weeks, in offices with lawyers and in rooms with the men who managed the practical operations of what was being converted. Some conversations were quick. Some required patience. One required him to sit for 4 hours while a legal team worked through a transfer document line by line. He sat for the 4 hours. He had learned patience young. The organization did not fall apart without him. He had expected to feel something about this. Instead, he found it simply true. What he had spent 20 years building was larger than any individual within it. It would continue. The structures would hold. The people who had built their livings inside them would continue building those livings. It would simply continue without him at the head. Aldo sat across from him at the last formal meeting, folded his hands on the table, and looked at Stephen for a moment. You've thought about this for a while, Aldo said. Yes, Stephen said. The Marchetti partnership will work, Aldo said. Claudia Marchetti is, between us, considerably more capable than her father understands. She knows, Stephen said. Aldo nodded. He was quiet. Will you tell me why? He asked. Stephen thought about it. I have a daughter, he said, and I would like her to know who her father is. Aldo was quiet for a long moment. That's a good reason, he said. They shook hands. He went to Sweet Origins on a Thursday evening after closing. He had called ahead. Diane had said yes, come. Rosa had gone home. Lena was in the back apartment, asleep. The shop was quiet and clean. Diane had left the front lights on and was sitting at the front table with a cup of tea and a stack of order forms when he came in. She was wearing a deep maroon blouse and had her reading glasses on. She took them off when she looked up. He sat across from her. He placed a folder on the table between them. I want to show you something, he said. Not to make a case for anything. Not to ask you for anything. I want to show you what I'm building so you can see that it's real. She looked at the folder. She did not reach for it. Tell me, she said. he told her. He told her about the 12 meetings and the 2 law firms and Claudia Marchetti's notebook and her precise handwriting. He told her about the properties and the hospitality holdings and the plan to convert them into a company that operated on clean terms, that could be examined by anyone, that did exactly what it said it did. He told her about the partnership agreement, the governance structure, the timeline. Then he told her about the building 3 blocks from Sweet Origins, the one he was converting into a food hall, a covered market for independent food businesses with kitchen access and a built-in customer base. He told her that he wanted Sweet Origins to be the anchor tenant, if she was interested. He told her the terms would be her terms. That she would have complete autonomy over her space and her business. That the offer existed regardless of anything else, regardless of what she decided about the personal part, regardless of what she felt about him. She was quiet for a long time. "You planned some of this before you came back here," she said. "Some of it," he said. "The rest came from watching you. From watching what you built and understanding what it required, and wanting to be part of what makes that possible for more people." She looked at the folder. "I don't need rescuing," she said. "I know," he said. "Sweet Origins would continue to do well without any of this. That's not what this is." He paused. "This is an offer of partnership. The only thing I'm asking is whether you'd consider it." She held her teacup. "And the personal part," she said. "The offer you made the last time you brought a folder." He looked at her. "I'm not making conditions," he said. "Lena is my daughter and I want to be in her life, and that does not have conditions attached to it. Whatever you decide about me personally, I will show up for her as consistently as you allow me to." He met her eyes. "But I want you to know that I am here because of all of it. Not only her. Not only the business. Because I understand better now what I failed to do 5 years ago. And I would like the chance to do it correctly." The shop was quiet. The display cases were clean and empty. The herbs on the shelf near the register were watered. The ceiling was the pale blue of early morning. "Open the folder," she said. He slid it across. She opened it and read it with the same focused care she gave to her supply invoices and her order forms, page by page, working through it thoroughly. She asked 2 questions. He answered them. She made a small note on the edge of one page. She read for 22 minutes. Then she closed it. "The terms are fair," she said. "They can be adjusted," he said. "I'll have my own lawyer review them," she said. "Of course," he said. She looked at him. "Stephen," she said. He waited. "What is between us," she said, choosing her words, "is not something I decide in a single evening. It is something I decide by watching what you do over time, consistently. I need to see that before I know what to call it." "I know," he said. "I need time," she said. "I'll provide it," he said. "You'll have to," she said. Not cruelly. Simply accurately. The tone of a woman who has survived enough to know the difference between a promise made in an emotional moment and a promise proven by behavior. He stood and put on his jacket. "Thank you for reading it," he said. She walked him to the door. He stepped out onto Mercer Street. The autumn evening was cool and quiet. He started walking. He did not feel like it was the end of something. He felt, for the first time in longer than he could name, like a beginning. The cake was Lena's idea. She had announced it on a Tuesday morning while helping Diane measure flour, standing on her stool beside the counter with a smear of flour on her nose and the expression of someone who has just identified an obvious solution to a problem that everyone else has been overlooking. "When people start something new," she said, "there should be cake." Diane looked at her. "What did I tell you about the word should?" "That it's a suggestion," Lena said without a pause, "not a rule." She tapped the spoon on the bowl. "I'm suggesting cake." "What kind?" Diane said. "Green and blue," Lena said. "Those are the most important colors." They made it on Saturday morning. Lena stood on her stool beside Diane at the counter and directed the frosting operation with the focused authority of a small person who has strong aesthetic opinions and the confidence to share them. Green for the outside because that was the most important color. Blue piping because that was Mama's apron color. The piping had to go all the way around. She was specific about this. She demonstrated the route with her finger in the air before a single loop was made. Rosa arrived mid-morning, looked at the cake for a moment, and said it was the most correct thing she had seen in recent memory. "I know," Lena said. Stephen arrived at 11. He came through the door in a deep maroon blazer and a light gray shirt, and he was carrying a folder. Diane watched him come in and thought, as she had been thinking for several weeks now in quiet moments when Lena was asleep, that he looked different than he had the first day he walked in. Not less serious, but lighter. The particular lightness of someone who has put down something very heavy and is still adjusting to the change in how they move. Lena saw the folder immediately. "What's in there?" she asked. "Papers," he said. "Important papers?" "Yes," he said. "For the new business?" she asked. He looked at Diane. Diane shrugged slightly. She asked questions. I gave age-appropriate answers. "For the new business," he confirmed. Lena nodded with the gravity of someone for whom this information matched her existing understanding of events perfectly. "We make cake for that," she said. "Come see." She took him by the hand with the complete unself-consciousness of a child who has already decided someone belongs in her orbit, and pulled him to the counter. She climbed onto her stool and pointed at the cake with enormous proprietorial satisfaction. "Green and blue," she said. "I chose." Stephen looked at the cake. It was covered in bright green frosting with blue piping looped carefully around the base and an abstract pattern across the top that Diane had attempted from Lena's description and that Lena had reviewed and declared correct enough. He looked at it for a long moment. "It's perfect," he said. "I know," Lena said. Diane came from the kitchen with plates and a knife. She was wearing the cobalt blue apron, the better one, and her hair was down and full. She set the plates on the counter and looked at the cake and then at Stephen standing beside their daughter, and something in her chest settled into a place it had not rested in a very long time. "Let's sign the papers first," she said. "Then cake." Stephen sat at the counter. He opened the folder. Her lawyer had reviewed it twice and returned it with 2 small amendments, both of which had been accepted without discussion. The final document was clean and fair, the kind of thing that said what it meant and meant what it said. Diane picked up the pen. She signed where she needed to sign. He signed where he needed to sign. Rosa appeared from the kitchen at exactly the right moment with a pen in her hand, holding it out to the space between them with the timing of someone who had been ready for this. She said nothing. She went back to the kitchen. Stephen signed the last page. Diane set the pen down. "That's done," she said. Lena looked at them both with the focused attention of someone waiting for the conclusion of an event. "Now cake," she said. "Now cake," Diane said. She cut 3 slices. The inside was honey almond, Lena's specific request, because it was the most important cake. She put the largest slice in front of Lena, who looked at it with the satisfaction of someone whose suggestions have been correctly and completely implemented. Stephen took his plate. He took a bite and was quiet for a moment. "This is extraordinary," he said. "The honey," Diane said. "From a man 2 streets over who keeps bees on his roof." "Bees are important," Lena said, with her mouth full and the authority of someone who has said this before and will say it again. "We should be kind to them." "We should," Stephen said. They ate their cake at the counter, the 3 of them, while Saturday morning moved through its ordinary rhythm outside the window. A couple stopped to look at the display. The flower vendor across the street rearranged his front buckets. 2 pigeons had a brief disagreement near the curb and then went their separate ways. Diane watched Stephen offer Lena the small piece of cake left on his plate, which Lena accepted with the unself-conscious trust of a child who has simply decided someone is safe. She watched the way he sat on the stool beside their daughter, not performing ease but actually at ease, in the way that cannot be arranged in advance or rehearsed. She thought about the morning he had walked into this shop in the maroon suit, and the way the room had shifted, and the way she had stood very still and made herself calm before she could face him. She thought about 3 months. 12 weeks of Saturdays in the park and Wednesday coffees and Thursday dawns and a park bench and a paper towel and a hand extended for help climbing up. 12 weeks of consistent, undivided presence. No phone. No driver waiting. No agenda beyond being exactly where he was. She thought about what he had said the last time he brought a folder. "I would like the chance to do it correctly." She looked at him now, at the counter, listening to Lena explain the importance of the bees on the mural Rosa had painted on the kitchen wall, nodding with the full attention of a man for whom this is the most important information in the room. "Stephen," she said. He looked at her. Lena was engaged with the last of her cake and a detailed account of a dream she had had about a very polite bee, which occupied her completely. Diane met his eyes. "The personal part," she said quietly. He waited. "I've decided," she said, "that I would like to see where it goes. Carefully. On the timeline I set. But I would like to see it." He was quiet for a moment. "I would like that too," he said. She looked at him. He looked at her. Between them, Lena put a small sticky hand on the counter and pushed herself up on her stool with the focused purpose of a person who has finished one activity and is ready for the next. "Can we go to the park?" she asked. "Yes," Diane said. "Can Stefan come?" she asked. Diane looked at Stephen. If Stefan would like to, she said. Stephen looked at Lena. Something in his face was very still and very full, in the way that is too large for ordinary expression. Yes, he said. Stefan would like that very much. Lena climbed off her stool. Bring the leftover cake, she said. For after. She went to get her coat from the hook by the kitchen door, already composing the next part of the day in her mind, already moving toward it with the confidence of a child who has never had a reason to doubt that the next thing will be good. Rosa came from the kitchen with a container for the cake. She handed it to Diane without a word, because she had known for weeks that this was exactly where things were going. Diane took the container. Stephen picked up his jacket and held the door. They walked out into the Saturday morning. A woman in a cobalt blue coat, a man in a maroon jacket, and a small girl in a yellow dress with red shoes who walked between them and reached up and took one hand each, completely naturally, the way children do when they have simply decided how things are and are already getting on with the business of living. The autumn morning was clear and cool. The sky was the pale blue of the ceiling inside the shop. Lena walked and talked about bees in the park and the drawing she was going to make when they got home, about the new addition she had decided the town needed, a garden because gardens were important and they had not thought of it before now. She walked between her parents and talked, and they walked beside her and listened and let her lead the way. It was, Stephen thought, the best morning of his life. And for the first time in 5 years he was not in a hurry for it to be over. If this story moved something in you, share it with someone who believes that it is never too late to choose correctly. And follow for more Crimson Mafia tales, because love that is built on truth and second chances is always worth the telling.